Okay, so I'm just gonna take attendance quickly. Dart Strayer, Chair.
Here.
Ellen Daviero.
Here.
Tina Lee.
Here.
Kathy Harder.
Here.
And Ashok Ramasubramanian.
Present here.
Okay, and I heard from Amanda and Jean that they're not able to attend. We don't currently have Jill or Chelsea, but we'll see if they attend later. And then just for the record, we also are joined by Rosemary Perez-Jaquith and Roy Thornton for the Biodiversity Initiative, and we have Art who wants to speak under privilege of the floor. And Clark's here.
Okay. Art, did you want to speak about biodiversity, or did you have another topic?
I'm sorry?
Did you want to speak about biodiversity, or did you have another topic that you wanted to bring up?
You want to speak about Windsor?
Okay. That's
Yes,
fine.
I'm ready. I'm ready whenever you are.
No.
Okay. So what I'd like to do, if it please the council, is I'd like to go through the order until privilege of the floor. We'll let Art speak. And then what I'd like to do is some of the other town residents would like to talk about the biodiversity initiative. So I'd like to move the discussion section up to privilege of the floor and handle that immediately after Art speaks, if that please the council. Okay. Hearing no one saying they disagree, I move we do that. So why don't we look at the minutes of June 3rd and go through it and see if we have any modifications or changes. Did anybody have any comments that they wanted to make?
I did not have any modifications to make.
Okay.
That's for
Does anybody else have any comments they want to make or changes?
No.
Okay. Do we have a motion to accept the minutes as written?
I make a,
Oh, go ahead, Tina.
okay, I can second it if Catherine wants to make the motion.
Likewise.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Okay, hearing none, the minutes have been approved unanimously. Okay, privilege of the floor. So what I'd like, Art, why don't you speak to the council first? State your name and your address for the record, and then the floor is yours.
Okay, very good. Good evening, members of the Conservation Advisory Committee. My name is Art Pasquarello. My wife Lydia and I live at 4016 Windsor Drive. I'm speaking on behalf of my neighbors this evening. I will tell you that there are approximately 20 of the neighbors here practicing social distancing in different rooms in the house, watching computers, observing the meeting. What we wanted to address this evening was the Kelch Farm project, and specifically the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SEQR. The resolution that was submitted to the town board for consideration on July 28th indicated that the Conservation Advisory Committee had recommended a negative declaration with the condition that traffic be mitigated through calming measures. It was our position at the town board meeting last Tuesday that the issuance of a negative declaration at that stage would have been premature. I mentioned to the town board last Tuesday that I practiced real property law in this area for 48 years, and every building project involves SEQR. And I found the statute to be strict, complex, and with no shortcuts. We would like you to consider several of the seeker regulations as they relate to this project, before the vote was taken on July 28th. I will tell you that many of the comments that I'm going to make this evening about the content which relates to the seeker regulations was presented at the town board meeting last Tuesday. And I'd like to start just by indicating that, first of all, traffic impact is one of the questions on one of the earliest forms required in any municipal review of a project. If the traffic increase is significant, a more detailed analysis in the form of an environmental impact statement is required. Now, there are regulations which attach to many laws in New York State. So the seeker statutes, the seeker laws have their own set of regulations. And I'm going to just make reference to several. One of them is section 6.17.7 of the seeker regs, which states that an environmental impact statement is required if there is the possibility of at least one significant adverse environmental impact. That section goes on to set forth a criteria for defining an adverse environmental impact. And two of the criteria are an adverse change in traffic or noise levels, an effect on the character of the neighborhood. When applying these state guidelines from the regulations, it is clear that the Kelts Farm traffic situation and the resulting harm to the Windsor neighborhood, if the connection was made, constitutes significant environmental impacts that fit the definition described above. Please consider the following. The traffic study completed by Creighton Manning, which was the consultant hired by the developer, projected 932 additional vehicle trips per day on Windsor Drive if the connection was made. And at a 90% diversion rate, there would be 149 additional trips during the morning peak and 122 additional trips during the afternoon peak hours. Both vehicle counts, I should add, per seeker guidelines, constitute a need for further traffic study. It's interesting to note that the opinion letters from the town designated engineer and Macer Consulting, the consultant hired by the Windsor Drive residents, both suggested that the Creighton Manning study be extended to include the traffic impacts from other roadways and intersections, to include Knott Street with the effects of the casino, Ballton River Roads, and Providence Avenue. Those additional studies were never done, but the planning board did adopt a round off number of 1,000 vehicle trips per day generated from the connection. So we believe, first of all, one of the criteria, the seeker guidelines was the increase in traffic. We have that. The effects on the neighborhood. We submitted proof that there was a loss in home and neighborhood value, supported by two local appraisal firms and a real estate agent, Faye Rispoli, who is highly experienced and knowledgeable in the real estate areas in this CUNA. The loss in property values ranged from 10 to 30% per those experts. So imagine your home being on Windsor and losing value even only at 10%. If the house is worth $400,000, a loss in value of $40,000. Even the Creighton Manning study concluded that it must be determined if the travel time benefits will outweigh any perceived impacts to quality of life as it relates to increased traffic through this predominantly residential area. So it seems clear that by seeker standards, if the road connection was to move forward, an EIS should have been required, and not simply a declaration, a negative declaration. And let me just discuss seeker and segmentation briefly. If the town board had approved the connection, but required a barricade until traffic mitigation was considered at some later time, it's submitted that such a piecemeal and segmented review process would be prohibited by seeker. The reason for this regulation, again, 617.3 of seeker regulations, states that if a proposal is broken down into pieces, each piece may not seem significant, although the sum of the pieces would be deemed a significant event and call for a further environmental review. The courts of New York State have repeatedly held that the review of an entire project is required before authorization is granted for a specific proposal. Herein, to delay the further study of the road opening, had it been approved last Tuesday, would have been the exact form of segmentation prohibited by seeker. So it is our thinking, our position, that those two criteria I mentioned earlier, adverse change in traffic and an effect on the character of a neighborhood, were clearly met and should have called for an EIS if the road connection was going to be approved. I would just like to state in conclusion that if you're going to make a recommendation this evening, and we don't know, but if you're going to make a recommendation this evening involving the future extension of Windsor Drive, we would respectfully request that you consider all seeker regulations and that you remember the people who live on Windsor Drive. You know, we talk about roads and maps and manuals and comprehensive plans. We sometimes forget the people who are directly affected by the proposed extension here. The people on Windsor Drive worked for 5 months from the end of February until now to oppose this project. And when the connection was turned down last Tuesday, we were elated, to say it mildly, elated. And we actually thanked the town board members personally for their efforts, because we believe they look beyond the roadway and the manuals and the plans for the people who were most affected by this roadway extension. And we would ask you to do the same if you're going to make some recommendation this evening. I would ask you to try to place yourselves in our position. From the Creighton Manning traffic study, there are currently 3,735 daily trips on Windsor Drive. It's hard to believe, but that's what their number was. The connection would have brought 1,000 more daily trips to increase to 4,735 vehicles. Imagine that volume of traffic going by your house every day. So if you're going to consider some recommendation, we would respectfully request that you consider my comments this evening, and I thank you for your attention.
Sorry, I muted you because Ellen was having a hard time hearing, so I just wanted to see if, yeah, sorry about
I'm
that.
on mute. Sorry. Yeah, that's okay. Art, I appreciate your feedback. I know the committee appreciates your feedback. And it's really important that residents let us know what their feelings are. And thank you.
I can promise you, to be perfectly honest, we were not as aware of your committee as we should have been, and we didn't pay attention to it till it was later on in the proceedings. But I promise you, if this comes up again, we will faithfully attend every meeting.
I hope you do. Thank you. Okay, did anybody else want to speak from Art or you?
No.
All right, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, what I'd like to do now is move on to the topic of biodiversity.
Hey,
And
Dark,
we
can
have,
I just clarify for anybody who's listening from Windsor Drive that the Celts Farm update on the agenda is an update only, and there's no action to be taken by the CSA on the Windsor Drive at this meeting, just in case anybody has to go or anything. There's no action at this meeting. It's just an update.
thank you, Laura. What I'd like to do now is talk about the biodiversity initiatives. So we have Roy Thornton. Roy, if you'd like to speak, you may address the committee.
Okay. I do have as I say, about a 5-minute presentation, and
That's perfectly fine.
do I just hit the present now button on the screen to get that? Okay, here we go.
It's a multiple click effort. You have to hit present now, then click on that screen that's small. So it's highlighted, and then hit OK again. So it's like 3 clicks. Present now, click on that screen, and then click OK.
Entire screen. Allow.
Yes, share entire screen. Click on that,
Allow.
allow. There you go.
This is kind of a mess. All right. Okay. I'm not sure.
Yep, there it goes. You got it.
It's not happening.
Yeah, so we can see your screen.
Oh boy. Here we go. All right. This should work. Now, do you see a page with 4 photos on it?
We can see it.
Great. I gave this presentation to the Parks, Recreation and Highway Department Committee, and I think it's probably worth repeating for those of you who haven't seen it. In 2012, I noticed that there were some bobolinks, and then on the closed landfill, and then mowing began, and of course it drove them off. There are significant reasons to try to provide grassland for grassland birds because they are in severe decline. Capped landfills make excellent wildlife habitat because, as in the case of Niskayuna, the acreage is large enough. Mowing could be scheduled, and the site is pesticide free. After I started this, I became aware that pollinators and insects are also in severe decline and could be a good strategy which would fit synergistically with grassland birds. There could be some significant benefits to Niskayuna: publicity, activities, and enhanced summer youth programs. This is a little bit of information about, say, the decline of grassland birds. It is noted that they need at least 20 acres, and the reason for that is that predators can come in from woodlands and brushland surrounding and destroy nests. If the acreage is big enough, then enough of them survive to propagate. This is a picture of the capped landfill. A is the biggest area. B is a gas vent-free area. E is the driving range, and C is an area that has already been set aside by the town to be unmowed. except say once a year, which makes it good for pollinators and insects, but it's a little bit small for grassland birds. Right now, the capped landfill is used for walking and also this disc golf. Disc golf occupies a major part of both of those capped landfills. This is an image of the larger of the landfills, and I've drawn in the disc golf pathways. There's another one here that I didn't get in, but it's small, or a small intrusion into the grassland. The areas that could be left unmowed would be here, maybe a neck here, here, and then the area between the disc golf and the bike path. Area C has already been designated as a restricted mowing, and it does provide habitat for insects and pollinators. That resulted after I started working on this. ASCR, the Audubon Society, the Capital Region did do some workshops in 2013. I don't know if anything has been done since, but they could be pulled back in to publicity, running workshops, providing sign designs, and so on. This is a sign that is up in one area, Area C, that was installed in 2013. There are other wildflower initiatives around. There's one over in Clifton Park that is has been underway for several years and seems to be working. What could we do? The disc golf areas could be mowed, but leave other areas unmowed. According to some reading I did on the EPA regulations, the requirement is to keep brush off and deep-rooted plants, and that would only really take mowing once every 3 years. I would imagine that the town would want to mow at least once a year. The project could be publicized, and as I said before, the Audubon Society of the Capital Region could be approached for further workshops. For pollinators, the guidance, excuse me, the guidance is mow only after first freeze in the fall, and plant disturbed areas with native grasses and wildflowers, and organize wildflower plantings by local groups. This was already done once in that smaller area that has been set aside for non-mowing with Denise Murphy McGraw, I think, and her Girl Scout troops. And wildflowers and pollinator plants could be planted actually in other areas of the town, even including along roadways. There are other grassland management projects around. Doesn't take too much research on the internet to find out about these, including waste management. They've done some great work in habitat management. Okay, how do I get out of this now?
There should be a button on your screen, maybe towards the bottom, that says stop sharing. So you just want to look, it'll be like sort of a gray bubble.
Okay, as you are, says you are presenting.
So you can also click that arrow, I think, and then also say stop presenting. You just need to find that stop presenting button. I might be able to just kick you off here. Oh no, you did it.
Okay.
Is Roy still with us?
Oh, did he just accidentally sign off?
I think so. It said he left the meeting.
Well, that's one way to stop presenting. I mean, he can come right back on. It'll be okay.
Hey, Laura, do we have a copy of that presentation?
I might have it. Yeah, here he's coming back. But we can definitely email it to you. I think he have updated it since he sent it to me. So Roy, we were just wondering if you can email me that presentation so I can share it to the board. I can follow up with them.
Okay, great.
I have a copy too. He sent it to me like last week.
I'm back.
Okay, yeah, that would be really good. Okay. Roy, what I asked Laura to do is send out your presentation to the committee members.
I'm sorry, you broke up badly.
Yeah, I asked
Okay.
I asked Laura to send out your presentation to the committee members. I thought it was a very enlightening presentation.
Okay. Are there any questions?
So, are there particular times of year with which the mowing is better for the birds as opposed? I mean, obviously the spring isn't probably a good time, but you said once a year. What would be a recommended time to mow?
For both birds and pollinators, the best mowing time would be very early spring or in the fall after the freeze.
Okay.
One
So,
question that was unresolved. I'm sorry. One question that
Go
was
ahead.
unresolved with the town was whether or not the closure agreement, landfill closure agreement would interfere with less mowing. I don't think it's,
I think
to
when
me anyway.
yeah, Matt had said that as long as it's mowed once a year, they are not allowed to have that like hard, trees and things that can penetrate the path. It's very compatible with grassland, but Rosemary is on the call, and I mean, I think one of the reasons that we put the Biodiversity Initiative on tonight was because we wanted to hear from you and Ashok.
Yeah.
And so we have been talking. Like, can you mute? I think there's feedback on you. Sorry. Okay. And
Laura, you're on mute.
oh, I muted myself. Okay. Is that, we did identify an area that we can use as a trial, and it may not be perfect. And I think that's still worth discussing, not mowing the landfill cap and all of those things. But as a trial thing, we identified this area along, like near Catherine's Woods. And one of the things that we talked about was, this is going to be kind of a big change. And we tend to collect the people around here that are fine with long lawns and want to see the flowers and stuff. But there's a fair number of people in Niskayuna who also really like the short lawns and the trimmed nature of them. And so it's really a public outreach issue in order to get people on our side so that they're not complaining about the long grass. Because I think that that's our biggest hurdle, right? Is that we set aside these things and then they get complained about, and then there's a lack of communication, and people in the highway department are getting yelled at for not maintaining the parks. And we did talk about some signage. I think the signage does help, but I also think that generally speaking, like, there's a whole section of society that's not going to read any signs. So what we had talked about was, if we're picking this area, if the CAC is willing to go up and down that street, the street that's adjacent to where we want to try this test, Lomo, which is right adjacent to some homes, and do outreach, like send out an initial letter, like offer to, meet people safely outside with masks, whatever we need to do, just to get the Biodiversity Initiative out there as a CAC and get that support so that, when we put up those signs and everything, like everybody in the neighborhood is going to be on the same page. And I can pull up a map if you want to see where we're thinking. And I don't know if like Ashok or Rosemary wants to jump in about that, but that's kind of the summary of where we're at right now.
Laura, one quick clarification question. You mentioned the neighbors and potential for conflict there. Like they may like the shorter lawns, like you said. And I'm going back to the landfill cap, and especially the map that Roy showed, where the disc golf people can have their way, and then we can still set aside some areas for low mow. The advantage of that plan is that it sidesteps the neighbors issue, because there are no neighbors, there are no houses over there. So could you go in a little bit detail into why the starting with the landfill cap is a non-starter right now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me jump in a little bit, Laura, too, and add on to this. So thanks for having me at the meeting, and know that it was lovely to have Ashok and Roy attend our Highway Parks and Recreation meeting this morning, and Roy attended last month, and very interested in hearing about biodiversity. And certainly what we're talking about are sort of competing interests here. So as has been pointed out, we have this recreational facility, this disc golf up on the land cap. And also on that land cap, as has been stated, we have to mow with some regularity, because the requirements are that we must adhere to is that we can't have trees or other shrubs, et cetera, take hold on the cap. So we've got, again, an instance where we have competing interests here. And although it would seem at first glance, well, just mow less, isn't that actually more helpful to the highway crews? They would have to mow less, but the fact of it is that they can get in there with these large mowers and get the grass down. And if they have to leave spaces for large grass, it actually requires more man hours, because they have to go in there with smaller equipment and sort of delineate these spaces. And to the extent that we can do that, we want to, again, serve all the competing interests, but it's not as just simple as, well, it's less mowing. And so would be good.
I understand that point.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that the part about the trees and that's not really a competing interest, because when you maintain a meadow, you do mow once once in the early spring and once in the late fall. So that gets rid of all the trees and whatnot. So and again, going back to the map that Roy just showed, there's a segment that we can set aside that completely will not interfere with the disc golf, and it's not like some kind of maze path, like going back and forth or twirly. It's like a chunk of land, and I'm inclined to believe that if when somebody is mowing with big machines, hey, leave alone that chunk of land. Like, that doesn't seem like an extraordinary hardship to me.
So as Roy pointed out, we have that, I think it was section C, that was already set aside and is available, is untouched, is got that low mow feature. So we're talking about cutting out spaces on the land cap in and around the disc golf. So again, I'm just going by the folks who do the work, right? Saying that it is an additional, for lack of a better word, more work to cut out these spaces. So again, in the interest of addressing competing interests, we got together and we talked about, well, if not, if this is something that is difficult in terms of mowing and addressing those competing interests, can we identify other areas? So we got together, as Laura can alluded to this morning and can speak further to. We tried to identify another nice patch that would address the needs here, the requests here. And so we do think it's worth a try. in terms of it's a nice stretch. And, you know, if you folks are willing to do the advocacy, and try it out. If it doesn't work, then we'll continue to try and work and find space. But it seems like it's worth a try. So anyway, that's how we sort of, we looked at different areas, and it doesn't have to be large areas. We continued to talk about, are there even other smaller areas that can address, pollinators, et cetera. So that's sort of where we are. And Laura, if you want to jump in here, if I'm missing any of the conversation, but sort of, again, in the context of trying to address competing interests, we thought, well, what other places can we identify? And this seemed like a nice, potential, stretch.
Yeah, just to tag onto that. I mean, I think that the highway and the town board hears that the landfill cap is the number one priority. But what Rosemary is saying is that, like, there's a lot of attention and focus on the land cap, and there's a lot of things going on there that are, also competing with the bobolinks. And whether that's right or wrong, I mean, everybody has their own opinions. Like, I think the bobolinks are the most important, but I think that in planning, we identify the low-hanging fruit, and we have a goal. So, but it sometimes isn't like, okay, we're gonna go for the thing that has the greatest impact, because it's sometimes slow steps and baby steps. And I think that it's really important now to get an initiative out there that is visible. It does have neighbors. I think that's actually a benefit to have neighbors, to get people on the side, to have it not be tucked away, but to have it be in a place where the highway department is safe and comfortable trying it. I think is important. So
let me
100% agree with that.
you guys clearly have more experience with town affairs than I do. So let me concede to your wisdom and say that like we will try the Catherine Woods area that you showed tomorrow. This morning. But can we informally say in this meeting that if there is stiff resistance from neighbors, communities, people who live there, then we revisit Roy Thornton's map and look at Blatnick Hill one more time.
Yeah.
I definitely think we can revisit, but I think that I'm just saying, to build consensus, like, sometimes the first steps aren't going to make everybody happy, but that's actually how you build. That's how you build the power and the initiative to move forward, right? And it's slow, and everything we do in government is slow. So I mean, I think that if the pushback on the cap is hard, like, let's find these places that build trust with the highway department, whether it be here or whether it be somewhere else, and we can continue to look at those maps and then just continue to build this program, and to the point where everybody's comfortable with the low-mo and we figure out new equipments, and then we can move to places like the cap. It's just my suggestion. Yeah.
Why don't you present the area you're talking about so we all know what it looks like?
So this is the landfill cap here. This is that area. Sorry, my computer's slow. This is the area that Rosemary was saying is already set aside on the cap. And the advantage to this area is it's actually completely off the cap. And so there's much less competing interest, and it's a really good place. And it's 5 acres, which I know Roy said isn't enough really for the bobolinks yet. But we also talked about, the town is, potentially changing this area, and there may be road and there may be opportunity as they're building, a bypass road through here. There's a lot of invasive species and brush, like buckthorn. And if they're building the road and take that down, they can continue to expand this habitat and just make it richer and better and bigger. So this area also has an ability to be grown. But here's where, we want to take a look. And so what the outreach would probably entail would be River Hill here, all of these houses. and probably all of Catherine's Woods because they're essentially all connected. And this black line would be, we would still continue to mow a path that people could walk through. So, you know, so that they're not walking through the high grass. This, so maintain like just a, you know, 7-10 foot wide with path through here. And then the rest would be wildflower, or would be not mowed. And like we talked about this morning, any way that we could get Girl Scouts or anybody who wants to donate and find a way to make this more beautiful, like seed it with wildflowers, bring in plugs, like do whatever we can to increase the diversity of what we're not mowing. And obviously, it, you know, if you do that, I think it also helps with pollinators, but also makes it a little more attractive. So that's
Laura, currently this is a set aside that the town owns.
so the town owns all of it. Yeah, this parcel here is the driving range, and then these two parcels up here are just part of Blatnick Park. So this is all on town-owned property.
Is it possible to start on this year? Like contact them, you know, we still have a month of growing season left. Is it possible to, you know, do something for biodiversity in that space this year?
I mean, I think so. Like
Yeah.
I saw Ellen pop up to say she's willing to do the outreach. I'm willing to work with you guys on the outreach. Often fall planting is the best for, you know, if we can get plugs for the perennials or putting down, you know, additional seed. So fall is so if we can get everybody on board, you know, do some outreach, do some letters, show people what we're trying to do, and then work on it this fall and then see how it goes, you know, stop mowing it come next spring. I think that would be really ideal. So sort of prep it this fall.
Yeah,
Laura,
I would think.
You know, I'm sorry if I could jump in. You know, what would be great is to actually show the neighbors sort of a visual of what it might look like. You know, that might be really enticing to see. Look, you know, you're used to seeing this clean space, but you could see this, and you know, Niskayuna is a pretty, you know, open, progressive area, and if you could actually show people what it might look like in term, and also add, you know, the educational components, the benefits to our environment, et cetera, the promotion you would do, I think it would be helpful. And I don't know if you have the capacity, you know, through a computer-aided, you know, device, just actually, you know, show some growth so people could actually visualize what it might look like.
But what I was going to add was I think it's really important that we put together either a fact sheet or some sort of brochure. So when you go to the neighbors, they have something that they can take with them and look at it and think about it, rather than just going and saying, hey, you know, we want to do this project. And I agree with you, Rosemary. I think your idea is a very good idea, and I think we can probably come up with something.
So, Laura, how would it work? Like you would start a Google Doc that we all start chipping in, or one of us writes a draft and other people edit it?
I can try. I am old. You don't know how to use Google Docs. I sort of do.
Yeah.
My interns use them. Somebody can help me start a Google Docs.
I can start one. I can start one and share the document with the rest of the committee. I can do that.
Yeah, I actually think it would be a really good thing. And what we might want to do is if we could perhaps put together a slide presentation. I know, Ashok, you had some slides, and if we put together a deck, would it be possible for us to put it on the town web that somebody could look through it and say this is an initiative that the town is trying to do?
Sure, I'll start working on it tomorrow. Give me like a week or so, and actually
Okay.
like 3-4 days, and I can have a decent version. Then other people can edit it.
If
But
anybody else would like to be,
But I
more
would need
active-
that map. I would need that map that Laura just showed us.
Yeah, I can make a much better one that sort of like makes the path look curvy and nice, and then take some photographs. Like, because right now there's a split rail fence that goes along that bend, and it is really attractive. And I think that, you know, with some seeding of the wildflowers and stuff, we can just make it more attractive, and
Yeah.
then just start building off of it. Like if it's something super successful that those people become proud of, then more neighborhoods are going to ask for it. Then we can put it in more places, and then it just becomes the norm. But you have to start
I
somewhere.
like that plan, actually. I like that
Yeah.
plan about like reaching out and building consensus rather than trying to find a safe spot that nobody will challenge. I like that plan.
Yeah, the buy-in from residents, as Laura noted previously, I think is huge. Getting the buy-in and is a big component of it that you wouldn't get in the cap necessarily. People aren't going to know about that, but getting the buy-in from residents and, as you said, sort of growth in different areas would be great. Definitely a plus.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's really important.
You know, couple of related issues along the same lines. Like, you know, we talked in an earlier meeting about reaching out to business owners and talking to them about the landscape that they control. You know, GE has a lot of nice tall grass in their front yard these days. Just wanted to know if we can have a small discussion on reaching out to a couple of business owners.
Yeah. Again, I always support all those efforts, and to the extent that I can help you guys with them, I will. I do have overcommitments in all directions, so if there's ways that you can create those letters, and then it's just an editing and double checking thing, that's much better. But
Sure.
you know, when I can, I will.
In a previous meeting, you mentioned that like you have contacts with the facilities people at GE. Like if you send me those contacts, I will reach out. Like I won't burn any bridges. Like I won't be you know, harsh or anything like that. I'll be like super diplomatic.
You know what would be, I think, helpful? I think that's a good idea to reach out to people, but we should probably try to compile a list. Do we have a list of properties that might be good candidates for Grassland?
Yeah, like SI Group off the top. Like, just think of all the giant lawns that we have when you're driving up and down Bolton Road.
I mean, if we had a compiled list, then what we could do is we could reach out to each of these organizations and say we're asking all the commercial sites or landowners to sort of try this new initiative. I think a lot of this is how we present it, and I think if my view is if we were to go to, let's say, the SI group and just ask them to do it, before they made that type of decision, they would want to know what the benefits were and if there was support for that. So I think it's important that we put together a plan and then execute it.
Yeah, I agree. Because I think it's a tough sell, especially for places, you know, that are sometimes considering sale and stuff like that. So they want to keep their pristine maintenance record beautiful. So like maybe putting together a program where, you know, we're keeping track of what acres aren't mowed, and we can give them awards and the town can recognize so that there is benefit to their business, you know, even as a resale value. Yeah, you definitely have to make it cost effective and good PR. Which it is actually in both ways. Like the landfill cap is hard. I don't think we should give up on it, but I think like let's start with the stuff that is small steps. But like I think, you know, like if you're looking at GE, you know, they pick these wide swaths of land that even though they're not mowing them right now, they can take a big machine on and just mow it down in the fall. And for, you know, I don't know who started that initiative on GE. It's working. I mean, for the record, I think it's beautiful. Kathy thinks it's beautiful. Somebody else on this call just said
I thought it was really nice.
I have also heard that people don't like it. So there's a difference of opinion out there. There's no question. But yeah, and then, you know, yeah. So it's I don't know where it's going with that. Sorry.
Do we know that GE is purposely trying to establish a grassland?
Yes.
We do. Okay.
I mean, I don't know those people, but there's definitely people inside GE that are pushing for that. Oh yeah, that's what I was going to say. So those are, I mean, they can just take a big piece of equipment and, you know, do that once a year. And so there may be someone in maybe this is what you're getting at, Ashik, that we can talk to at GE who has already done a cost benefit analysis on not these wide swaths of land and figured out like why it makes sense from a corporate standpoint not to do it. It still looks okay. Nobody's dying because they didn't mow their lawn. And maybe they're alive.
can we start with just talking to GE? Just as a, we're not asking them to do anything like, hey, what started this? Why are you doing this? Have you done a cost benefit analysis like that? Like,
Yeah.
no pressure, no nothing. Just getting information from a business neighbor. That's all.
Makes a lot of sense. And then if they have those numbers, that only helps us. Then we can start recognizing all the hard work that they've already done and then try and bring it to some of the other businesses in the town.
And do you still have that contact information of their facilities people?
Yeah, the only reason I didn't send it to you is I just forgot. So if I don't respond to your email in a day or two, just email me again. I don't find it annoying. I apologize that you have to do that, but that's kind of the way it goes.
It's okay. On a related note, Union College is setting aside a bunch of land as Lomo also near the former Ramada, if you're familiar with that place.
What I would suggest we do as far as the Catherine Woods piece of property, I mean, if we can work, the next several weeks on, something that we can give to those residents or post on the website, then what I might suggest is that at the next meeting, we just basically develop a plan and make a commitment to go out and basically talk to the residents. I don't know how the committee feels about that or not. And again, we would do this purely voluntary. I know everybody has varying concerns about the pandemic. I don't want anybody to do it that doesn't want to do it.
Can I mention, in terms of other spaces, when I look at the schools, they have lots of acreage that are not playing fields, that are just mowed short grass. And it'd be a great educational piece for the kids to get involved in establishing something like that at their schools. Kind of like what Ashok is doing at Union College. And that's free labor.
That's a very good point. Like I think Tina gave me a contact at the high school, like somebody. Oh God, I forgot. It's
the environmental teacher, Mr. Scott.
Mr. Spola.
I think it's Mr. Scott because
Scott.
also he set up the beehive in the media center. That was the other connection that we were talking about.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Yes.
Can somebody volunteer to contact Mr. Scott?
I can call Mr. Scott. My oldest son took his environmental classes, and we know him. So it'd be great to reach out to him.
There's another possible
All right, so I will start working
resource,
on the
the Five Rivers Conservation Area, south of Albany. I believe they manage a fairly large number of acres on a 5-year cycle so that they maintain a variety of habitat for birds and insects ranging from grassland up through brush, and then they knock it back down again. They have all those habitats available at the same time.
Good. Laura, you're on mute again.
Well, I was just saying that's cool. I've heard a lot of really good things about Five Rivers Conservation Center. I've never actually been there. I think that the schools generally do field trips to there. So I'm hoping at some point they will take Lily, but if not, I will take her myself. That's cool that they do that. I know they used to do that at my college in Binghamton. I don't know if they still do it, but Binghamton University used to do that. They would rotate through the successional habitats. Yeah, it's cool when you do that.
Okay. Do we have, I'm being mindful of the time, and as great as we like talking about this topic, we do have some other topics to talk about. Does anybody else want to add anything else, or? We can pick it up at the next meeting, and we look forward to the Google Doc site.
So I just wanted to say that Mr. Jennings at the high school is the lead, is head of the horticulture club. So I know.
Oh, okay.
So I know that. I mean, he anyways, on the website. I also know that. I mean, anyways, that's all I want to say.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, hearing no other comments, I'd like to return to, unless you wanted to do pesticide outreach, was that related to this, or I want to save time so we can talk about the zoning, because I know that's important. Laura?
Ellen and I have been working on the pesticide outreach signs. I think we gave up on the schools, right, Ellen? And then I had potentially a top student who might work on it, and you also had someone that you thought might work on it too, right? Ashok, I'm just gonna mute you, sorry.
Sorry.
I just randomly mute everybody. It's
So
coming
yeah.
along.
So sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
So, I had sent that one that the one sign that I really liked. I liked the shape of it and how small it was. And I think that, what it presented. And I sent it to you late today, but it was basically just a website that I thought we could emulate on ours about information, to put, for low mow, for, how to mow your lawn, how to take care of it, how to be able to have a lawn without pesticides. And what I liked about that sign is that they were little tiny round ones that, you could put, at the, they weren't big, crazy big signs that I thought would deter from people wanting them all, on their lawns. And I thought they were, nicer. I just thought it was, small. I don't think we don't necessarily have to have the same printing, but when I reached out to the company locally, that wasn't the one that they had done for Clifton Park. They had done like a bigger sign that was more paper, like what you would get if, when the from people who, come and treat your lawns. And I didn't want it to look like the ones that people got treated for the lawns. I wanted it to look distinct from that. So
Yeah, I like the family on it too, with the dog and flowers. I like it. Yeah, okay, so that's what it's like in somebody's yard.
Well, I mean, it just has like, the dog, the cat, the bird, the chicken, everything right on top of each other and the family. But anyways, so I liked the concept of it as opposed to the ones that looked like the ones that other lawn services put down. I will continue along that path. I don't know what else.
The only thing I think that we should probably add to something like that is like the town of Niskuna seal if we're giving them out, and then just maybe instead of it, just say I took the pesticide
I agree
pledge, with the town of Niskuna or something like that, and then also put a link so that when people see it, they could be like, oh, I want to do that.
Oh, that's a great idea. Like, can I have one? Like, when can I have one?
So the town board has fully supported this. It's just a matter of us putting together the sign and then ordering some, and then probably getting a little bit of information on our website, because I think we should. Like, I like this. I like the colors. I like the I just think we just need to add our website or something at the bottom, so that when somebody sees it, they can be like, I like that. I want to do that, and they know where to go to to work through whatever they want to do on their lawn.
Yeah, we can totally put some advantages of pesticide-free lawns on the website and then have it
but
linked
this
from
can
the
just be
sign.
something shiny and happy that attracts people's attention, but it's not too obnoxious.
Yeah, it's not it's like the opposite of obnoxious. I love it.
Yeah, I think if we put them around the town, it would perk people's interests and they'd stop and look at it. And I think given the size of it, it's not intrusive. People would not basically object to having it on their lawn. I think it's a really good design.
And I think that so the last thing that I'll say about this is that, I agree that we should have, in order to get a free one, you have to sign the pesticide-free pledge. And yeah.
Yeah.
Did
no,
we,
that's a good idea.
is there one that exists for Niskuna or should I have a copy of one that we could, make our own?
Yeah, I don't think we have one yet. I may have started one, or I may be remembering yours. I've definitely read one that I think looked like we could use it, but we don't have an official one adopted or anything. So, because I think what the town board is waiting for really is just, like a fully put together plan with the signs and everything that they could actually pass, at the town board level that says, yeah, we're supporting this plan. Yep, you can come get these signs. And, they can even do an email blast and everything. We just have to have it all ready to go, put together, with our sign budget, which I don't think it has to be astronomical. I think those signs are relatively easy to make, and, we can get a decent amount of them for just a couple $100, which we have. So we have.
You got my vote so far. I love them. They're really cute. They're great.
Yay.
Okay, so my plan will be then to I will take care of the pesticide-free pledge, and I will work to try to take that sort of like website about what I sent you about lawn care, and sort of try to make that our own, and then get that over to you and see who can make those signs and make them more of our own.
Yeah, I usually use the guy on Knott Street. He does a really good job.
Okay.
Parcel Post. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll reach out to them.
That's great. Okay, let's move back to the EAFs. We have one EAF to discuss tonight. It's the zoning code amendments. Laura, do you want to walk us through it?
Yeah. I think at some point we've discussed all of these, but they've actually been kind of, popping around from board to board for almost a year and a half, potentially. And we removed any of the controversial ones. The town board took on chickens all on their own. So they're not part of the zoning code. They would be their own chapter. And, I know we struggle back and forth with whether or not to regulate Airbnb, but for the sake of the reason that we're trying to do this relatively quickly is one of the things that the town board asked us to look at and make sure that we had in the zoning code was the ban on vaping products as well as marijuana, because we struggled a little bit when the CBD oil place came in so close to the schools. I mean, I know that there's a lot of literature out there that CBD oil is healthful and healing and everything, but there were some people from NICAP and some other interests that were just a little concerned. They feel like it does have a place, but that we have this 1,000-foot barrier to selling tobacco within schools and daycare, but it doesn't include specifically vaping and marijuana products. So that kind of hole right now needs to be filled. And so, we're only putting the stuff on there that is hopefully easy for us to all agree on isn't going to have negative impacts and can be okay. So, you guys don't really need to see my face. I'm just going to share this with you. I love sharing my screen. Ashok, are you muted? Okay. So, the main reason that we're really opening this up now and trying to move the timeline ahead is this to add the definition of e-cigarettes and marijuana products into the code. We've looked at this a couple times, and it does help with climate smart communities. Is the electric vehicle charging stations and infrastructure, and so and then we've also had quite a bit of, well, not quite a bit, but some issues with non-visible fences. Oh, we've had a couple people walking down the street and, with their strollers, and had dogs come like just charging out of the house, like right up to the property line on either side. And it's just been really alarming for them. And there aren't any regulations in our code right now for non-visible fences. So people may actually be installing them in the right of ways, which is a little bit too close to the sidewalks and stuff where people are walking. So the idea here is to put the definitions in, of the code that we're changing. There's just a hole in the neighborhood commercial zone. For some reason, when we were building that schedule, it doesn't have a CN zone. I'll just show that to you quickly. So here's the definitions. I don't know if you guys are that familiar with our schedules, but right now the schedule for neighborhood mixed use building is just completely empty. So there aren't any like bulk zoning requirements, which means like a neighborhood mixed use building could be built on the tiniest lot ever with no setback. So that's just an oversight that needs to be taken care of. One of the things that we wanted to do with the electric vehicle charging stations is just require that if you're building a parking lot with more than 25 parking spaces for a business or more than 10 units for a new multifamily dwelling complex, that you add electric vehicle ready parking space. And I think that just helps with climate smart community, and it helps incentivize people understanding that there's new modes of transportation and stuff like that. Doesn't seem stop me at any time. Another hole in our code is that right now temporary signs can be any size you want them to be, which really hasn't caused any problems in like 20 years until recently. And we've had a couple of businesses go through that, had a sign. It was only for 30 days, but it was like literally the size of a building. and in a windstorm, it was actually mildly hazardous. So we just wanted to kind of close that hole and not let temporary signs be any bigger than 32 square feet without some kind of a variance. The non-visible fencing, I kind of alluded to, you guys, has had some safety concerns over where it's going. So it would just require a building permit, and it would have to follow essentially the same rules as any fence permit. But it also requires signage. So hopefully if a dog is barreling down at you and it's a non-visible fence, there would be the little, 10-inch signs that say that it's going to stop the dog, which would hopefully help. Yeah, go ahead.
Would the electric fence count as an accessory for the code, or would it be exempt?
Currently, I think because it would require a building permit and we'd be treating it like a fence, the way that it's written now, I would still be considered an accessory structure. And it's a really interesting question just because it's called out for in a building permit. But we could put a 6, I would think, and say for the purposes of this code, non-visible fencing shall not be deemed an accessory structure. It's probably worth it.
I would hate for people to get hung up on that if they had like a detached garage and a shed and then they wanted to put an electric fence up. I'm not quite sure what a fence counts. Maybe you're allowed 4 or 3, but I think we should.
Yeah, 3. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because you want the building permit and you want the safety rules in place so that, they can't be building them so close to the sidewalks. And because they're not getting a building permit, I think that sometimes they are going in the right of way. So it's just a double check to make sure they're keeping them on their property line, that they're being marked, but they really aren't an accessory structure like a normal fence because there's nothing that you can see. So yeah, I think, if you guys want to add in your recommendation that we put in there that, for the purposes of chapter 20, it's not considered an accessory structure.
So I have a question about the invisible fence. So
Yeah.
How does this impact, like if you hire someone to install your fence? So if you're the homeowner and you hire a company, because some people do it themselves, but most people do hire the company. So
yeah, that's normal. Typically the contractor would take out the building permit, just like a fence contractor. Some people install their own above ground fences as well, but more often it's done by a contractor who takes out the building permit.
Oh, okay. So the companies would be notified, so they would, right? So they would know that when they're doing this, that's what they would need, that they need to now get a building permit?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Laura,
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, I have a question on F number 5. No dog having been found a dangerous dog shall be confined by an electronic containment system as provided for. Don't you mean, is the intent that it shouldn't only be contained by an electronic fence?
Yeah,
there should be other restraints. Is that the intent?
Yeah, I mean, I this is copied from other codes that are regulating for non-visible fencing, but I think non-visible fencing is obviously not as effective as a physical barrier, you know,
Right.
to the
Right.
dog.
So I think if you put only in there, no dog having been found a dangerous dog shall be confined
Only by
only by an electronic, because that's kind of ambiguous the way it is.
yeah, I think that's a good clarification.
Thank you.
Okay, got that one. And actually, and you guys probably don't care, but I don't think we defined electronic containment system. So we probably need to change that to non-visible fencing so it's consistent with our definitions. So it would say, no dog having been found a dangerous dog shall be confined only by a non-visible fence system as provided for above. If that makes sense. Okay, do we have any more comments on that one? I will keep going. This is the section of code that I was talking about that's really driving the code changes right now. And that adds e-cigarette products and marijuana products to our code right now that is trying to restrict the sale, location and sale, which is tied into protecting the public health, safety, and welfare of the community. Because there's been studies that show that when it's available and at eye level, there's higher rates of teenagers choosing to use the products. So if they're tucked away and not as visible, it limits the use in the community. And there's tying to those studies, and then just adding that e-cigarette retailers and marijuana retailers shall not be located within 1,000 feet from the property lines of the Niskuna Central School District, nursery school, school of private instruction, or child care center. And that ties into the vaping ban that the town just added at our parks. So, I mean, it's kind of been implied, but just NICAP's been working really hard with the town board on this. We just want to make sure that it's clear that vaping is a nicotine product. You know, I think they were starting to show that it's tied to problems. So that's being included in all the codes.
So we don't have to include parks in that listing of 1,000-foot.
No, because the code actually, you know, sort of by law has to be tied to a certain rationale, so that if it's you know, brought to court and somebody's saying that is not fair to me, you can show why the town board took the action as follows. And yeah, I think that most of the studies that you see are with schools. I don't know that, you know, yeah, inside parks are being banned, but the 1,000-foot radius is tied to like high concentrations of, you know, children, and trying not to expose them to these products so that they can make healthy choices. Then this is just a typo somewhere in some of our training. We learned that you're not supposed to call the alternate ZBA members ad hoc, and our code does. So this is just changing temporary ad hoc to alternate. It's just a typo. And that's it. Does anybody have any questions on any of those?
Yeah, I had one other question about the signs.
Mhm.
So if we go back to that. You have an exception that says a garage sale. Do you have it up?
Yeah, right
Let me
here.
just pull it up right here.
Oh, got it. Oops.
Yeah. So my question is that sufficiently restrictive for a residential area? And the second question I have is, if a church or the school wants to have a garage sale, are they going to be prohibited from erecting the sign?
No, I think that the intent of that is that for temporary signs advertising a special event, typically commercial, and it would be like grand opening, summer sale, you know, like those banners that they put along the buildings to try and get people's attention. And it requires a building permit so that we can regulate the time and the material. But they're excluding signs advertising a garage sale. One, because you don't need a building permit for a garage sale. And, I think people put them wherever they want to go. So garage sale signs aren't regulated and don't require a permit. But any temporary sign that's related to a special event, like for business, needs a permit. So I don't think that would affect, we would have to amend the code if people started putting up, like 10-foot by 20-foot garage sale signs. But typically, I think residential homes don't have the resources to build a giant sign like that. They're just putting up regular garage sale signs. And if the school puts up, a big one every once in a while, I don't think it's the end of the world. I think what we want to avoid is just these giant ones of coming soon. That are the building inspectors had no ability to say that we can't issue a building permit for that. They were just almost damaging to the surrounding community because they're so large.
Yeah. Okay. I was just, I didn't know if we had any experience of people having garage sales and we were worried about them putting a huge sign on the front lawn.
It isn't a problem to my knowledge, although quite honestly, this code I don't think has been amended in a long time. So the temporary signs, commercial temporary signage hadn't been a problem, but just recently, like within the last couple of years. So, I think if garage sale signs do become a problem, but there's so many of them out there and they're mostly on weekends, and it's pretty hard for the building department to regulate that kind of residential advertising. It becomes complaint driven. And if we get there, we get there. But I'd say my recommendation, just, running the building department on a day-to-day basis, is the issue is really the commercial signs right now.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions that they would like to ask Laura about the code?
Laura, I had a broad question. Like in the last 2 times we did these environmental impact statements, it was for the Kelts Farm property and the Ace Hardware. It was clearly defined, we answered questions on wetlands and trees and whatnot. I'm a little lost on what exactly we are doing here with an environmental impact statement when we are talking about signs and vaping and,
So it's a really good question, Ashok. New York State Seeker Code, the law that you guys were hearing about early, requires that if you're amending your zoning code, it be considered a type 1 action and subject to all of the questions that we're looking at. But we do sometimes see projects that it just seems like the questions are not applicable. But in a lot of situations, amendments to the zoning code are going to have far-reaching environmental impacts. So, right now, the zoning code, say in rural residential, requires all of the homes to be on 2-acre parcels. Like if we were Clifton Park and we had 1,000 acres of rural residential, and then the zoning board, the zoning code was changed so that rather than those lots having to be 2 acres, they're now going to be a ½ acre. You're significantly changing impacts to traffic, the way that land can be developed, and all of that density is going to play into what you're typically looking at in the environmental impact statement. But fixing typos and addressing vaping and stuff like that is not really going to trigger anything in an environmental impact statement. It's just a requirement by code, because typically when you amend your zoning code, you can make some pretty sweeping changes across your entire town that may have relevant questions. My recommendation, for you guys to look at this, really does not have a lot of impact. That's why I'm asking for a recommendation from you guys tonight if you are comfortable. But yeah, sometimes you scratch your head, but it's one process for everything.
So do we have any other questions for Laura at all?
Okay, so
go ahead, Laura, I'm sorry.
Well, it's kind of up to you guys. I did pull, the impact on land, the impact on geological features, impact on surface water, impact on groundwater, impact on flooding, impacts on air, impacts on plants and animals, impacts on agricultural resources, aesthetic resources. I would think that if anything, if we were going to know anything, that making sure that the signs aren't 100 square feet or whatever the other one was is probably only going to help. And that impact on historic and archaeological resources, open space and recreation, critical environmental areas, transportation, energy, noise, odor, and light, human health, community plans, and community character. Like if anybody thinks that there's an impact there that they want to note, we can talk about it, or I can go through each individual question. It's kind of up to you. Like to Ashok's point, I think the answer, generally speaking, to everything is no, because they're so minor.
Laura, there's a bunch of places in the PDF that you sent. The yes box has been checked. I'm looking at page 10 of 13 at the bottom. I'll be honest, I don't understand what's going on, but I just wanted to say the yes box has been checked in some places.
Oh, you know why? I use the EAF mapper, which DEC does online, and it'll automatically fill those questions in for you. So any EAF, if you're doing it online, the DEC has GIS overlays of, historic areas. And I did the entire town of Niskayuna when I was filling out the EAF. So it's just automatically populating that with answers. They're not necessarily relevant to code updates, but they are, there have been, like, for instance, on 10, DEC's map is saying that in the entirety of the town of Niskayuna, there has been at one point a reported spill, because this is our entire town limits when you do code updates.
Okay.
Unlike unique geological, so it's actually just being populated by the website. So Mohawk Gorge, Riverview Road, Clifton Park. Maybe that we're just close enough when I use the entire town limits that gets triggered. There are New York State wetlands within the town of Niskayuna. So the answer, and we do have floodways. So the answers to those are all yes. I guess the question is, are any of those code changes going to significantly impact them?
And Laura, one minor thing, on page 13 of the PDF, page 1 of the form, I think your email address is misspelled on one of the boxes.
Keep going.
So page 13 of the PDF and the first page of the form. The one you sent us.
Oh, page 13. Yeah, okay. First page of the form. Sorry.
Yeah, right there.
Oh, yeah. I will check the PDF, but that does look like I missed something. I will fix that. That's a good catch.
So how would the committee like to proceed? Do you want to go through each of the topics, or do you just want to raise a concern if you have one? I'm open to the committee's wishes.
I don't think it would be productive to go through each question. Does anyone else have an opinion on that?
I agree.
I agree.
Okay. You're shaking your head, Tina, so I'm assuming that's a yes, affirmative. Okay. Would someone like to make a recommendation?
Wait, so are we looking for recommendation that says that we accept the changes as they are? Is that what we're looking for?
So
Well,
I've noted the changes.
In the question that talks about animals, that doesn't mean pets, right? Because this fence thing affects the animals, but I'm assuming they're talking about wild animals in the EAF form.
Yeah, I think that's the assumption.
Okay.
Well, the
So, like,
electric fence would only affect the animal that has the collar.
yeah, I think that those questions, the flora and fauna questions, are typically when you see clearing and loss of habitat, and what the impacts are to the native wildlife. Typically, that's where seekers going with those questions.
So I guess what I was asking was, would somebody want to make a recommendation either to have a negative or positive deck? And then if we want to put specific conditions on that recommendation, if it's a negative deck, then we can do that.
I'll make a motion, we approve this as a negative deck.
Okay, do we want to put any conditions on this at all?
I can't,
We made some changes to the text.
right.
Laura, do you have those changes or?
Yeah, so I mean, my recommendation would be to do the neg deck, and then as a recommendation to the planning board, consider, you know, changes adding number 6 for the purposes of chapter 220, you know, non-visible fencing shall not be deemed as an accessory structure, something along that line. And then number 5, add the word only by non-visible fence. I don't think you necessarily want to condition the seeker recommendation on that, but just put that as a
No.
recommendation to the planning board to make those changes.
Yeah, I agree. We wanted to, you know, we'd like the attorney to look at it as well to make sure that we haven't introduced a problem into the code. Okay, do we have a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Let the record show that the negative deck passed unanimously. Okay, great. Going back to the agenda now, we're in reports. So Laura, if you want to give us an update on the planning department.
Yes. Sorry, I have.
Take your time.
Okay, they are. Yes. So the first one I have on there is the Kelch Farm. I wanted to let you know you did hear from a resident this afternoon, or sorry, earlier this evening, that the town board reviewed that special use permit and they did modify the planning board's recommendation to make the full road connection. So they have said no road connection, bike path only between Windsor Drive and the development. And so I know you heard a lot of, I think, really good discussion on the EAF. And there was a concern that you guys may be taking additional action on that project. To my knowledge, you would not be. The town board is the lead agency when they grant the special use permit. So I believe, you know, they read your recommendation. You guys had put in there that you didn't that you didn't want to see the connection unless there was some kind of mitigation on Windsor Drive, because you did recognize the impacts to it with the modification to the special use permit and no road connection. I don't think that there's any violation of the seeker recommendation or the seeker process that was done. It's now at the point when the planning board is just going to review it, you know, with the minor subdivision regulations and the constraints that were granted with the town board on the special use permit. So, so average density development is allowed. And I know that you guys were, you know, you had that recommendation that you wanted to keep the open space as deed restricted, forever wild. That was taken to heart and put into the special use permit. So I think that was a really good observation and great. And I think with the change in connection, there's a possibility to get some more open space. And I sent a couple ideas to the planning board. I think we're going to look at maximizing the open space and potentially saving some of that lupin field. I was talking to the developer. Speaking of low mow, no mow, if there's some way that we can maintain and enhance that habitat there, not only is it good for habitat, but I also think it's nice, kind of like we could put up a sign or something about the kelp farm that used to be there and kind of maintain that bit of field and that bit of space out of respect for the history of what used to be there on the property. So there's quite a bit of work that still needs to be done. I don't think that there's any more CAC work that needs to be done unless something major changes, but I did want to update you guys. I know that was a real long meeting. You guys worked really hard on it. and I recognize that it was a concern for you. Town board said no connection. So we'll work on all the benefits that that project can have.
what happens to the forever wild space, the little patch of forest? Like, what happens to it,
Well,
legally speaking?
I mean, so that's what so when the town, when the planning board finalizes the minor subdivision plan and they, figure out where the roads are going, what parcels are going to get deeded to the town, where the infrastructure, all that stuff, any of the easements, any of the stormwater, once all that's finalized, the planning board does preliminary minor subdivision approval, which allows the developer to go out there and start building and putting utilities in. And then once he's got all the utilities in and the roads are paved, he's allowed to put in one house. He comes back to the planning board for final subdivision approval. And at that point, he's to the point where you're going to record the subdivision and start turning all those deeds over to the town of Niskayuna. And so at that point, he would write up a deed to the town of Niskayuna that says, this area shall remain forever wild. Our attorneys and everything would look at the language, but it essentially happens at final subdivision when the land is transferring over to the town of Niskayuna. The town board will accept the roads, they'll accept the easements, and they'll accept the deeds. And because of the conditions in the special use permit, we'll make sure that those deeds say that land will be kept forever wild. I do think that maintaining that loop and field, we can look at it. I think that if it's forever wild, but you're still maintaining the loop and field, you're probably okay. We'll take a look at it legally. But typically those forests, and we have a variety of land that's designated as parkland. It's a similar type of deed restriction. It's just allowed to be. Like, if a tree falls from that property onto a neighboring property, sometimes the highway department will go in and clean up that tree. But generally speaking, you just let it be.
Knowing what you know about town's history and all that, like, what is the probability that little patch of forest will come to be and not developed by the developer?
It won't be able to. It couldn't be. Yeah.
Okay.
And that was it. So that was one of the really big advantages that we noted with the average density development. That was one of the reasons that we really didn't want to see the return to kind of an R1 outright by right subdivision, was that typically in R1 subdivisions, even if we have smaller limits of clearing, once the property transfers hands, it becomes private, people want bigger yards. Deed restrictions or not, a lot of times they're going to clear all the way to their property lines. And the advantage to this is their property lines are going to be pretty tight to their property. And we also noted that means smaller lawns. Lawns can often be very damaging to the environment because of the chemicals and things that people put on them. So smaller lawns and more open space. And we have Blatnick Park across the street. So the advantage to keeping the one forest is maybe keeping a little bit of that intact habitat. It is a nice forest. And then maintaining maybe a pollinator field of lupins don't have a lot of. So
yeah, I just want to jump in here and say thank you to the Conservation Advisory Council for weighing in and considering this. Certainly our residents and their review of these issues is really vital, important, and we appreciate that. And in terms of the Kelts Farm subdivision, I think, as Laura said, the town board accepted the special use permit with modifications, so that the only thing that will happen from here on out is the planning board will, address the final sketch. And as Laura said, it'd be great to, again, look at that and maximize the open space, as we've discussed, the potential for more green space, more, open space, and along the lines of what we discussed tonight, furthering that is a great thing. So I just want to take the opportunity, since I weighed in, if I'm here in this meeting, to just say thank you for your service. Thank you for paying attention to these things. Thank you for your attention, your diligence, your advocacy, your support, and helping us accomplish these. Again, speaking of competing goals, but your thoughtful consideration of all these things is much appreciated. So again, thank you for that.
Thank you for the feedback, Rosemary. It's good to hear feedback from residents and the boards as well. I think we tend to dwell on, people not happy with the decisions, but it's nice to hear support. Thank you.
muting myself. See, I also mute myself, not just you guys. 3410 State Street is the Niskayuna Guns and Ammo store on Route 5. And it's right on the border, right next to Graham's Coffee Parlor there. They have put up a like a temporary pod, like a metal pod that the planning board is reviewing. Clark, I don't think we've did we take that to, I don't think we've taken it to the CAC yet. It's kind of an up and coming thing because it's not allowed under the zoning code. So we have a couple site plans and stuff that we'll probably share with you. That's something that's coming down the line. They have a constrained site and they have some storage issues and things that they're working through. We don't want to see that pod remain permanent. So we're kind of like trying to figure out how the pod can stay there and how he can potentially add an addition, which would serve, him and the community much better. So stay tuned for 3410 State Street. That's probably something that's going to come forward to you once it goes to the zoning board and, may or may not receive an area variance and then would be allowed to continue on the planning board for site plan approval. 859 Pierce Road, just updating you guys. You took a look at this one in 2019. It's been a while. That was the property, was Hans and Judy Knight, and they had that 25 feet along Pierce Road. They wanted to put a home in back of their property where they could build and move in, and hopefully we're hoping that their son could move to the front. And, we looked at that one a couple meetings because we don't like flag lots in the town of Niskayuna, but we looked at the remaining lots around it and said, well, in this particular area of Niskayuna, they're all flag lots. So is it fair to say no to just this one? So they're back for sketch plan approval. You guys did your recommendation. There was quite a few conditions in your recommendation, which are still being adhered to. So I just wanted to let you know that that one has come back. 2804 Aqueduct Road is that old fire station, kind of all the way at the end of Aqueduct Road by River's Ledge and the Balltown Road traffic circle. And he's just looking at putting a second story and doing some facade upgrades. So it didn't trigger any environmental review, but I did want to put that one on your radar. I think that right now, because it's an old fire station, it's just literally a box of bricks. And the guy that is working there is proposing to add a second story and make it just look a whole lot better. So it's going to be a really good project for the Architectural Review Board to see if we can blend that property into the surrounding residential areas, make it look a little more attractive. And I think that that's a win because River's Ledge is probably going to start construction this fall. So it's going to be an improvement to the area, which is hopefully going to be synergistic to what we see going on that property. And then 1448 Balltown Road is the Ace Hardware. You guys saw this more recently and you did a recommendation, and your recommendation on that one was also taken, and they did approve the Ace Hardware going into 1448 Balltown Road. So they're good to go. And we're hoping that they're actually going to open at the end of this fall as well. So those are the updates from planning. If you guys have any questions.
Thanks for the update, Laura.
So I know that sometimes in the past, the planning board and the CAC, they didn't always agree, but I feel like noting that almost everything that you guys have recommended has really been taken to heart by the planning board. It's very valuable, and you see things that they don't always see, like even tonight, noting, non-visible fences as an accessory structure. It's really good to have that set of eyes, and I really appreciate all you guys do. And if you do make a recommendation on a project and I don't update you on it and you're interested, just reach out, because typically there is a lot of follow through to your recommendations, which you may not always see. So. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Laura. If we have no other business.
I had one quick question,
Yeah,
please.
Sure.
We were talking about doing the outreach, for the biodiversity. We talked about badges. I would feel a little bit more comfortable with a badge, like knocking on people's.
Yeah, I got your email and I sent it to the badge maker. And I'm not actually sure why I haven't gotten back. I got a couple people. I think Kathy and Ellen also sent me theirs, and I I will check up. You are 100% entitled to a badge, and I apologize. There isn't any reason that it hasn't gotten to you. I did forward I know I got pictures from all 3 of you. I did send them over to Lisa Stevens. She's the one that makes the badges. So I will send her an email right now and ask her if they're ready. And then I'll email you guys when you could pick them up, or I can have a building inspector drop them off.
Okay, Laura, I'll
thank
send you a picture too. I have.
Yeah, anybody who needs a badge, send them a picture. Yeah, especially when we're doing outreach. We really just need that official identification. It's really important.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, I make a motion that we adjourn for the evening. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for all you do, guys. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
Rosemary.